Hi there, welcome to this episode of Road and Load. Before we go any further, I'm just going to ask if you could like this video, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel. Now I'm Elizabeth, by the way. I'm joined today by Beth and our guests, Tunde and Graham. Do you want to introduce yourself, guys?
Yeah, well, as you said, my name's Tunde. I'm a transport manager for haulage and also passenger. In my previous life, if you can call it that, I used to be a recruitment agency manager, supplying drivers to various different companies.
Great, okay.
Hi, Elizabeth. My name's Graham. I've got 40 years experience in the road transport industry. Roles have included mechanic, driver, workshop manager, and in the latter years, fleet management roles for a various number of companies. Great,
thanks for joining us, guys.
So let's jump straight into it. It's all over the media, the shortage of drivers at the moment. What's your guys' view on it? What do you think is the core reason why?
I think the core reason that we're seeing at the moment, has many components. BREXIT, COVID, a lack of industry awareness. But I don't know about you, Tunde, but I can go back 10, 15 years and it's been a problem.
I think so too. When I was a recruitment agency manager, we used to find it difficult to find drivers. I'm talking about 10 years ago. And that was just 7.5 ton drivers, let alone anything else.
Yeah. It's quite a challenge, isn't it? Because the job, the role of the HGV driver, it's perceived as a difficult industry to get into. It's quite costly to get that licence.
Yeah.
I think that was then. There's so many schemes, apprenticeships, etc. at the moment. I think a lot of those barriers have been taken down.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, well, speaking from personal experience, my husband has a logistics business, and we actually we take on drivers for 3.5 ton vehicles, and then if we see a lot of promise in them and they're reliable guys, then we will put them through their training. We'll pay for everything. They don't even have to pay it back. If they leave within a certain amount of time, then we ask for them to be paying back some of their training costs. But that's another way to progress. You enter into a business, and they'll promote you. They'll pay for you to do the training.
Yeah. I think some of the misconceptions that you see in the press, and maybe a reason why we're where we are, it's always badged as what I call the trampers. So the guys and girls that are away a week at a time or more, and yet the facilities, they're getting better. We might have still some way to go, but if you look at road transport, there's so many businesses that operate on own account where they're delivering, whether it be furniture, builders merchant material, a whole level of things that aren't away all week, and it is a little bit more regular hours. I mean, transport's never regular. It starts at Plummeneck in the morning and can go on till late at night, but generally sort of 6:30, 7 o'clock till about 5-ish, 6-ish.
Yeah.
I think it's all about choice, to be honest with you. If you know that there's scope, so that yes, if you want to go tramping, etc., go away from Monday to Friday, yes, that's there for you. But at the same time, if you want to be back home by 6 o'clock in the evening, there is work out there for you. See, as long as you know that there's choice there, you can pick and choose, really, I think, at this stage.
So do you think this information needs to be better well educated so people know that you have this option and you don't, like you say, just have to stay away all week, which lots of people think it is like that?
I think the only way you're going to get that sort of information out is through social media, really, and other outlets, just to inform people, look, there is options, and it's not just, you go in there as a driver, you can progress further up the chain as well, become a transport manager, become a fleet manager, whatever you want within the industry, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, again, speaking from personal experience, I totally agree with the variety of driving jobs there are out there, because within our own business we have people who only do day runs, we have guys who much prefer to do 3, 4, 5 day runs, and none of our guys sleep in the cabs. Every single driver, if they're out overnight, they get a hotel, and it's usually a decent chain hotel. They're always ensuite bathrooms, so it's not always sleeping in the cab, roughing it, as some people might think. Some of the cabs these days are fantastic anyway, but there is a massive variety. But you're totally right that we need to get it out on social media, maybe in schools, that you know, a bit more of a true perception of the industry rather than what people think it is now.
Yeah, definitely. I suppose a good way of doing that would be to look at the pros and cons. What would you both say are pros and cons within the industry?
I think one of the biggest pros at the moment is flexibility.
Yeah, I think so.
If you think about how we work generally now, you know, we live in a 24/7 society, therefore trucks are rolling generally 7 days a week. You know, a truck can work 24/7, the drivers can't, therefore there's a big demand on drivers. And if you've got someone whose personal circumstances mean that they can only work 2 or 3 days a week, this is a career that you can facilitate that.
Yeah,
I think that's a good one, a good point. I mean, I think another pro is that this is a good time now to become a driver, a really good time. Even if you haven't got the required license at this time, there's a quick progression now, so that you can actually get the right category of license to go out there on the road. I think it's a good time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is good.
What do you think we can do to encourage diversity? You know, more women drivers, more ethnic diversity. What's the way of, you know, getting the message out there that we need to be a more diverse industry?
I think just the forums like Road and Load, just, you know, getting that message out there that historically, yeah, truck driving may well have been a male-orientated business. Is it because you had to move a lot of heavy stuff off the back of trucks? The world's changed, you know, automated gearboxes in trucks a lot easier to handle loads. Crikey, I can go back to before we had curtain side trailers, but you know, you don't want to hear about that.
Dark ages.
Absolutely. But you know, the job is a lot more simple now, and therefore, whilst you know the skill of a driver is still required, it is the skill of the driving part we should concentrate on.
I think it's also down to where do you advertise. So, you know, if the different outlets in regards to advertising will attract certain types of individuals. So if you want more women to come to the industry, then, you know, change your advertising strategy. If you want more ethnic minorities to come into the industry, well, change your advertising strategy again. And that way, you will be more inclusive rather than exclusive.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And something that does often come up as a negative is being healthy and things like that. So how would you guys answer back to that, really, in a positive way of how you can still be healthy within this job?
Yeah, staying out day after day. How do you have fresh, healthy food when you know you can't take it all with you if you're on a 5-day run? How do you suggest? Yeah.
Oh, there's been times when I've been working in the office, you know, day in and day out. So I've got a choice, isn't it? It's all about choice, isn't it? If we prepare, I know what's going to happen throughout the course of the day. If I prepare, make healthy lunches for myself before I come in, then it's going to help, isn't it? If I'm in a HGV vehicle or I'm a bus driver or whatever, I know it's going to be very difficult for me to get food out there, rather than the fast food would be very easy to get. So I can prepare. So prepare yourself. You know what's going to be, your day is going to be like, and that way you can prepare healthier meals so you can be healthy as well.
I think you're right there. Also, a lot of the companies that employ drivers have moved on. You know, we're very into promoting well-being.
Yeah.
We have been for quite some time now. So it's something that we talk about as part of business as usual. Well-being and healthy eating. And I totally agree. You know, pre-planning where you're going to get your lunch. It's not just limited to HGV drivers.
Yeah, I mean there are CPC courses now. I mean, I've run a few of them where the topic is for 3.5 hours about health. You know, we break down what's in the kebab. Like, for instance, you know, how is that going to benefit you? It's not going to benefit you very much. Drinking more water, all those sort of things, and maybe things that people haven't thought about. And that's what it's about.
Good, yeah.
You know, switching switches on in your mind, and then obviously open doors to a better way of living, I think.
You know, you've only got to look at the working day for a driver. There's rest periods there for a reason.
Yeah.
And therefore, you don't have to sit in the cab in
No.
your rest period. You know, whether it's walking around the truck stop, walking up and down a road, wherever.
Get the blood going again.
Just, get yourself out and re-energised.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Yeah, so there's the cycle to work schemes as well, which obviously promotes health. So if those drivers are not tramping, the company maybe encourage them to be more healthy. So cycle to work scheme means basically they'll get money to contribute towards a decent bicycle in order for them to actually ride to work and be healthy.
That's a really good idea,
That
actually.
is, yeah.
So they were doing that in London, weren't they?
Yeah.
With the bikes and everything.
Definitely.
So do you think it's also maybe like a government matter of them trying to do more things to help, you know, the companies promote this kind of stuff?
I think so. I think if they subsidise companies more, then obviously that's going to help, isn't it? Because not always, you know, the smaller companies need help, isn't it? To encourage their drivers to be more healthy, you know, in ways like cycle to work schemes, etc. So yeah, I don't know what Graham thinks.
A lot of big companies provide all of the various schemes. I think, you know, if the government were to get more behind availability to those, it can only help.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
I mean, some of the schemes that the industry's used in the past, I'm thinking about how to reward drivers, and some of the pros is and it's sometimes seen by drivers as a negative, is, oh, I'm tracked, I'm measured, I'm managed. Well, the truth is you're measured and managed whatever job you do.
Yeah.
You know, whether you're putting tins of beans on a shelf or putting the beans in the tin or transporting the tins of beans.
Yeah.
You know, in past careers, we've used telemetry to measure a driver's performance, and those drivers that drive safely and effectively and efficiently save businesses a lot of money on fuel, and reinvesting that money, those savings, back in the drivers, as so many companies do now, help, because, you know, if the drivers are not rushing around, they're calmer. There's so much well-being to be had out of that as well.
Exactly. I mean, I know there's a bus driver I know who's been a bus driver for quite a long time, and he's on 50k per year. That's because obviously no accidents, etc. So each year, if you're a safe driver and you prove your weighting goal, so to speak, then you can earn a good, decent wage.
So there is like a ladder that you can climb up, and
definitely.
there's not necessarily a limit of, you get to that and that's it. There's a lot of different opportunities, I suppose, which is great.
Yeah. Definitely.
I have heard that there's a lot of coach drivers and bus drivers moving over to HGV driving, commercial vehicle driving. Is that true?
Yeah, that seems to be the way at this moment in time, because obviously there's a great need for HGV drivers and people are willing to pay a lot more. So,
that's
so
going to
why
cause
not?
a shortage, isn't there, of bus drivers?
Exactly. So if there's no buses, you know why. That's the way it goes. Yeah.
So what can we do? It sounds like we need to be attracting more, like the next generation, because it is a predominantly sort of older man, you know, middle-aged man is the driver of the day. The driver of this time, sorry. How can we attract younger drivers? How can we make them see that the industry is not what it's normally perceived to be?
I think, anything you can do to get to people early. So we need to be capturing the school leavers.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, a lot of people in recent times have gone down the university route. There's a lot more going down the apprenticeship route of late, so we need to capture those people and widen out the HGV part. You know, we're part of supply chain logistics, you know, whatever you want to call it. If you've got someone leaving school, yes, they're not going to be able to drive an HGV straight away, and then you've also got the challenges of new drivers. You know, we always find homes for them somewhere, but it's sometimes a bit of a challenge. But getting those people that not only are leaving school but are just wanting a career change to come into that industry, and as you said earlier, Tunde, just how big and how wide and breadth that industry is. There's so many opportunities, I believe.
And I think as well, changing the misconceptions about a driver, because typically people think, well, driving is something you do because you can't do anything else. You haven't got much going on up here, but that's not the case at all. You know, it's not just about driving. There's a lot more to it as well. And as we said before, there is a ladder which we can climb, and you know, there's different areas of the business and transport industry that we can go into. So if we catch them young and say, look, make it a career choice rather than, you know, a second option. And that way we will have the next generation, and a good generation as well at that.
It's not just a job, it's a career, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's a good
I
idea.
think, you know, a positive that has come out of the recent months with the driver shortage, I think the role of the HGV driver, it's raised its profile significantly. People have realised that it's not the job you've just described, it's skilled.
Yeah.
I think overall, drivers were often looked down on until quite recently, really. And I think that in the last few months, the whole world has started to realise how important drivers are. Not just HGV drivers, all drivers. There's nothing that we own or have that hasn't been brought at some point on the on the lorry. So
that's true.
Without them, we're all stuck, aren't we? So it's nice to finally hear that people are respecting the role and the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you both had one thing you could say to new people out there that might be considering becoming a driver, what would you say to them as a word of advice?
Up to you, the older one.
Thank you. I think one word of advice, don't view it as just an HGV driver. It's a career that you could take, a career path you could take for life. And I think talking today, we've established that there's so many avenues that you can go off. The world really is your oyster.
Yeah,
you don't have to just deliver appliances, you can deliver people as well. So you have to think about yourself, well, are you happier dealing with people, or would you be happy dealing with appliances?
Yeah, that's true.
Boxes or whatever that may be.
Yeah, that's true.
Then make your decision from there.
So how inclusive would you say the industry is?
I think it's quite inclusive. I think you've mentioned most of the vehicles are automatic now, for one. So that's going to help anyone that's got any physical challenges. And even if you're dyslexic as well, that's something else, isn't it?
Yeah, certainly in neurodiversity is now things like dyslexia. Shouldn't stop somebody driving an HGV. As I'm sure there's always a limit to what you can do with physical disabilities. As we've said, auto transmission in trucks and everything else that there is makes it as accessible as possible.
Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, I run transport management courses sometimes for individuals that want to become transport managers, and just because you may be dyslexic, that can be, we can accommodate that. So if an individual has difficulties in a certain area, maybe you'll have a scribe which will help them or write down the thoughts which are on their head, so they can be marked based on that. So I think that really and truly that we can accommodate, anyone at all. And we need to. We definitely need to.
I think that should be encouraged a lot more and brought to people's attention, because it could be putting someone off if they was worried about a test or whatever, if they didn't know about that. So I guess that's something else for people to be educated on.
I think so.
So besides the obvious role of a driver, what would be some of the key things you'd actually have to do?
Yeah, okay, so the job of driving an HGV is, you might say, fairly obvious. There are a number of key attributes to that role. Safety plays a really big part, whether that's personal safety, safety on the road, safety of the load you're carrying. Every day you go out or every shift you go out in an HGV, you have to do a first use check. So you need to understand the basics of how a truck works. You need to understand the law around that. Is a tyre becoming illegal? Is something going to cause you a problem? Could the DVSA, who's the regulatory authority, pull you over for that? So you need to understand that element.
Don't forget load security as well. Obviously, before you even leave the yard itself, if the items are not strapped down correctly, obviously you're going to be penalised for that. So that's something for them to think about as well.
I think one of the things we've been really good at in the industry is how we've introduced, the driver CPC element of theoretical training to the practical test. So even if you're new and have never driven a truck, you get a really good grounding on all of this before you're given a set of keys. But it is massively around safety, how the mechanics, and when I say the mechanics of a truck work, just the key components. And load security, as you've already mentioned.
I mean, if you had a job spec for a driver, for instance, for one, yes, he's a driver. He's also an ambassador for the company, or he or she that is. Ambassador, there'll be also security officer because they're making sure that the load is secure and they're safeguarding it from one place to another. They've got their customer service as well, because if there's a problem, they're the ones that have to deal with it. Yeah. The list goes on, really, when we think about it in regards to their responsibility throughout the course of the day.
That also does mean that it's a really varied role
yeah,
as well.
Definitely.
It's
You're not going to get bored.
At the wheel driving,
No.
You've got quite a lot of you've covered a lot of areas there that is actually makes the job more interesting.
Yeah, definitely does.
Yeah.
So, guys, in your career, thinking back, long way. What has been? What would you say is the highlight? What the best thing that you do, or the best part of your job?
I think for me personally is teaching people. If I can teach someone something, even if it's just to use a tackle machine, something as simple as that, I'm happy. If it's to do with CPC training, and the individual at the end of the 8 hours said, look, I've learned something today, even though they've been in the industry for 20 years. So that's a good thing and to be able to do, and I'm happy when I do that.
Likewise, I've got two, so an individual and a business one. So for me, the highlights was reaching my ambition to drive a truck very early on, and how I've used that career to progress, to provide for me and my family. And that's been a fantastic journey. If you think about the wider picture, the bit I really get a buzz out of was some of the Driver of the Year competitions that we ran, where we celebrate the best of the drivers that worked within the businesses I worked for. They were always open to everybody, but just running that to promote safe and effective driving, I used to really get a buzz out of that.
That's a really good idea, actually. Yeah. If you've enjoyed this video, please do click to like it and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you have any comments or questions, leave them below and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.